Hello and welcome back to the history of the Mongols. I'm your host Kyle. While Ögedei Khan led his armies in the final conflict against the Jurchen dynasty, as we covered previously, this campaign was not the only front where Mongol forces were active. Concurrently, Chormaqun Noyan returned westward, leading Mongol armies back into Iran to pursue Jalal al-Din Mingburnu, the determined Khwarezmian prince, intent on restoring his father's empire. This pursuit marks a significant expansion of Mongol control, encompassing Iran, the Caucasus, and even Anatolia, effectively broadening the empire's southwestern boundaries. Simultaneously in the western steppes and Ross's territories, Subutai commanded another Mongol force, executing a large-scale two-pronged assault on western Eurasia, a topic we will explore further in upcoming episodes. To fully grasp these events, we need to revisit the earlier Khwarezmian campaign of Genghis Khan in the 1220s. As discussed previously, the Mongol invasion beginning in late 1219 precipitated the rapid collapse of Khwarezmian defences, culminating in the desperate flight of Muhammad Khwarezm Shah. Harassed relentlessly by the Mongol generals Jebe and Subutai, Muhammad died at the close of 1220. His son Jalal al-Din Mingburnu, considerably braver and more tactically adept, assumed leadership of the remnants of his father's empire. Rallying whatever forces remained loyal, Jalal al-Din moved into present-day Afghanistan, where he managed to defeat two Mongol detachments. However, his success was short-lived, culminating in a decisive defeat by Genghis Khan himself at the Battle of the Indus River in November 1221. Famously, as Mongol forces closed in, Jalal al-Din dramatically spurred his horse off a cliff into the Indus, swimming to safety on the opposite shore. Reportedly impressed by this audacious act of courage, Genghis Khan personally instructed his archers not to target Jalal al-Din during his escape, though no such mercy was extended to other fleeing Khwarezmian soldiers. Following this dramatic escape, Jalal al-Din spent 3 tumultuous years in northwestern India. At that time, the region was fragmented, ruled by several Muslim warlords who had emerged from the remains of the Ghurid Empire. Among these was Iltutmish, a general based in Delhi, marking the beginnings of what would become the Delhi Sultanate. Although by the late 13th century, the Delhi Sultanate was robust enough to resist Mongol invasions, during the early 1220s, it was only one among several competing regional powers. When Jalal al-Din arrived, Iltutmish faced a significant rival in Kubacha, who controlled the Punjab and the lower Indus River. Despite sharing a common Muslim identity, the post-Ghurid rulers harboured deep-seated animosities towards the Khwarezmians. Jalal al-Din's father, Muhammad II, had been a relentless adversary of the Ghurids, and following the Ghurid Empire's collapse in the early 1200s, Muhammad had aggressively annexed their western territories, extending Khwarezmian influence into areas adjacent to India. Notably, Jalal al-Din's own appanage, the city of Ghazna, had been the former capital of the Ghurids. Furthermore, the Khwarezmians were at odds with the Abbasid Caliph in Baghdad, who supported local leaders opposing Khwarezmian expansion. Consequently, Jalal al-Din's reputation as an aggressive and expansionist ruler hindered his acceptance among the region's Muslim and Hindu leaders alike. After his defeat at the Indus, Jalal al-Din urgently sought refuge and regrouping space away from the Mongols, who, although initially halted at the river, soon resumed their pursuit. Gathering survivors from the Indus battle and other refugees, he defeated local Hindu rulers in the Salt Range, attracting additional followers through his military prowess and charisma. Despite his ability to rally support, Jalal al-Din found diplomacy challenging. With Mongol forces under Dorbay Dokshin closing in, Jalal al-Din fled deeper into India, eventually approaching the outskirts of Delhi itself. However, his diplomatic overtures to Sultan Iltutmish resulted in failure. The Sultan executed Jalal al-Din's envoys, likely considering the risks of provoking Mongol hostility. With Delhi too formidable to attack, Jalal al-Din retreated westward, pillaging territories as he went, successfully evading Dorbay Dokshin's pursuing forces. Eventually, Dorbay abandoned the pursuit and returned to Genghis Khan in Samarkand by late 1222, where he received a stern reprimand and was ordered back to India to resume the chase. Meanwhile, Jalal al-Din turned his attention toward the Ghurid successor state in northwestern India and Kubacha, the primary rival of Sultan Iltutmish. He quickly forced Kubacha into submission, demanding tribute. Throughout most of 1223, Jalal al-Din carried out destructive raids along the cities of the Indus Valley, eventually reaching as far as the Gujarat Peninsula. These actions significantly antagonized the local powers from the Indus to the Ganges. News soon reached him of a looming coalition formed against him, uniting Sultan Iltutmish, Kubacha, various Hindu rulers, and notably the renewed advance of the Mongol general Dorbay Dokshin. Upon learning that his half-brother Giyath al-Din had begun to establish a power base in western Iran, Jalal al-Din decided in 1224 that it was prudent to depart India, leaving trusted commanders Ozbeg Bey and Hasan Karluk in charge of his holdings. Unfortunately for these officers, they faced the full fury of Dorbay Dokshin, who, unable to locate Jalal al-Din himself, vented his frustrations upon them. While these developments devastated Jalal al-Din's commanders and weakened Kubacha, Sultan Iltutmish profited considerably from the chaos. With his main rivals diminished by both Jalal al-Din's campaigns and the subsequent Mongol attacks, Iltutmish, whose own territories were relatively unscathed, consolidated his rule. Through the late 1220s and into the 1230s, he was able to establish the Delhi Sultanate firmly as the dominant regional power. Although Iltutmish's successors warrant further discussion, for now we must return our focus westward with Jalal al-Din. His 3-year sojourn in India yielded little toward his ambition of resurrecting the Khwarezmian Empire. Nevertheless, the actions of his half-brother, Giyath al-Din, provided new opportunities. Giyath al-Din had begun to re-establish Khwarezmian authority around the region of Rai, present-day Tehran. Determined to assume leadership over any restoration of the empire himself, Jalal al-Din swiftly moved westward through southern Iran. Initially arriving in the province of Kerman, he encountered the local ruler Barak Hajib, a former Kara Kitai general who had declared independence following the Mongol invasion. Jalal al-Din initially secured Barak's submission and even married one of his daughters, although Barak soon rebelled, forcing Jalal al-Din to continue his journey. Next, Jalal al-Din reached Shiraz in the province of Fars, where the local Salgurid rulers welcomed him, leading to another politically advantageous marriage with a Salgurid princess. Subsequently, he proceeded to Isfahan to regroup and consolidate his forces, with only a select group of cavalry, said to be flying white banners reminiscent of Mongol standards. Jalal al-Din boldly launched a surprise attack against his half-brother Giyath al-Din, capturing him along with his followers and territories, significantly enhancing his military and political strength. With the northeastern portions of the old Khwarezmian Empire, including the critical cities of Gurganj and Samarkand, firmly under Mongol control, Jalal al-Din recognized the necessity of expanding westward. By doing so, he aimed to secure resources and strategic depth to better resist Mongol aggression. Gaining the allegiance of various regional leaders, including those in Luristan, and further solidifying alliances through additional marriages with local Turkmen princesses, Jalal al-Din established control over a considerable portion of southern, central, and western Iran. His attention soon turned toward Baghdad, perhaps hoping for support from the Abbasid Caliph, al-Nasir, who had reigned since 1180, but was by now incapacitated by blindness and paralysis. Nevertheless, the memory of Muhammad Khwarezm Shah's failed attempt to seize Baghdad lingered, prompting the caliphate to view Jalal al-Din's approach with suspicion. An army sent to repel him was skillfully outmaneuvered. Jalal al-Din used a feigned retreat to decisively defeat the Abbasid forces, driving them back to the suburbs of Baghdad. Unable to mount a successful siege of Baghdad itself, he redirected his attention to easier targets. In 1225, Jalal al-Din attacked and dismantled the Eldeguzid Atabegs of Azerbaijan, former Khwarezmian vassals, who had recently submitted to the Mongols, capturing their capital, Tabriz. Shortly thereafter, a Georgian incursion into Tabriz prompted his first significant encounter with Christian forces. Over the following years, Jalal al-Din unleashed a campaign of devastation against the Kingdom of Georgia, which at that time also controlled Greater Armenia. Georgia had previously suffered significantly from Jebei and Subutais' raid a few years earlier. In 1226, Jalal al-Din captured the Georgian capital, Tbilisi, inflicting severe damage, particularly to the city's churches. According to the contemporary historian Kyriakos Ganjaketsi, Jalal al-Din did not distinguish between Christian and Muslim inhabitants, Instead, he went as far as ordering the circumcision of all men within the city. Following these events, Jalal al-Din Mingburnu quickly returned to Iran upon hearing that Barak Hajib was threatening Isfahan, the recently established Khwarezmian capital. Barak promptly offered apologies and gifts, diffusing tensions for the moment. However, while Jalal al-Din rested in Isfahan, word reached him that Georgia had revolted again. Reacting swiftly, Jalal al-Din led his army back to Georgia, carrying out a severe massacre near the walls of Akhlat, though failing to capture the city itself. Around this time, more troubling news arrived. A Mongol army dispatched by Chin Temur, the Mongol-appointed governor of Gurganj, a former Khwarezmian capital, was approaching Isfahan. Jalal al-Din returned promptly, confronting the Mongols in August 1228. Despite his courage, Jalal al-Din's forces suffered a defeat. His half-brother Ghiyath al-Din fled the battlefield, forcing Jalal al-Din himself to retreat under pressure. Yet, due to heavy losses, or possibly fearing an ambush, the Mongol forces chose not to pursue further and withdrew, narrowly saving Isfahan from occupation. Displaying remarkable resilience, Jalal al-Din moved again into Georgia in late 1228, securing one of the most notable victories in Georgian history at Bolnisi. Also known as Mindori, the opposing force consisted of a large coalition of Georgians, Armenians, various Caucasian ethnic groups, and a significant contingent of Kipchak mercenaries who historically served both Georgian and Khwarezmian rulers. Given Jalal al-Din's numerical disadvantage and lack of heavy cavalry, his position was precarious. His vizier Yuldusci suggested a tactical retreat behind enemy lines to cut off their access to water, weakening them in the heat. Jalal al-Din's response, recorded by the historian Juvaini, vividly captures his temperament. Enraged, he hurled a pencase at the vizier and exclaimed, "They are a flock of sheep. Does the lion complain of the size of the flock?" This response highlights his characteristic bravado and aggressive leadership style. Following this incident, Yuldusci made amends by paying a substantial fine of 50,000 dinars. Acting diplomatically, he successfully negotiated with the Kipchaks, highlighting Jalal al-Din's own historical ties with them, convincing them to withdraw from the battle. Yuldusci then persuaded the Georgians to engage Jalal al-Din through single combat, in which Jalal al-Din reportedly defeated their champions personally. This demoralized the Georgian forces, allowing Jalal al-Din to launch a decisive general assault, crushing the opposition. This victory represented the peak of Jalal al-Din's military successes. However, Jalal al-Din's fortunes soon declined. The latter half of 1229 found him bogged down in a prolonged siege of Akhlat, which he eventually captured after 8 months in April 1230, but at significant human cost. News reached him that the Seljuq Sultan Kaikubad I of Anatolia was forming an alliance against him, prompting Jalal al-Din to march westward. During this period, Jalal al-Din fell gravely ill, losing his strength and becoming unable to ride horseback, requiring him to be carried in a litter. In August 1230, at Yassıçemen near Erzincan, Jalal al-Din confronted a combined force of Seljuq and Ayyubid troops led by Sultan Kaikubad I and al-Ashraf, the Ayyubid Sultan of Syria and nephew of Saladin. Despite his illness, Jalal al-Din attempted to mount his horse to lead the battle, but was too weak to even hold the reins. Observing his condition, his courtiers prevented him from joining the fight. Mistaking his withdrawal for a retreat, his troops broke ranks and fled the battlefield. The allied Seljuk Ayyubid forces, suspecting a feigned retreat, maintained their position and ultimately won a decisive victory. Jalal al-Din narrowly escaped yet another catastrophic defeat, though his mood undoubtedly worsened upon hearing of a new Mongol army approaching. Far to the east, Ögedei had ascended as the great Khan of the Mongol Empire. Recognizing Jalal al-Din's ongoing resurgence and potential threat, Ögedei sought to permanently eliminate the possibility of a renewed Khwarezmian state and consolidate Mongol control in the region. Aiming perhaps even at Baghdad, Ögedei dispatched fresh forces under the command of Chormaqun, an experienced member of the imperial bodyguard, the Keshig, and veteran of earlier campaigns against Khwarezm. This expedition marks our first recorded mention of the Mongol tamma system, a strategic deployment of military units tasked with border defense, territorial expansion, consolidation, and intimidation rather than full-scale invasions. Some historical accounts suggest that Genghis Khan himself initially ordered Chormaqun's mission during his final days in 1227, an order reaffirmed by Ögedei. Thus, Chormaqun's campaign became a critical step in the broader Mongol strategy to stabilize and extend their southwestern frontier. Chormaqun embarked on his campaign with approximately 30,000 troops, backed by the local Baskaks and Darugachi responsible for governing Mongol-controlled territories in the west, such as Chin Temur. Early in 1230, he crossed the Amu Darya River, initiating the systematic conquest of Khorasan, a region left devastated and disorganized following the earlier Mongol invasions of 1220. Chormaqun strategically avoided lingering resistance points, delegating to Chin Temur the tasks of capturing these fortresses and establishing effective local administration. By autumn 1230, Chormaqun had reached Mazandaran in northern Iran, capturing the city of Rai, which he subsequently established as his military headquarters. Over the next 2 years, Chormaqun consolidated his position there, orchestrating the submission of most local rulers in Iran, with southern territories formally acknowledging Mongol dominance. By 1233, nearly all of Jalal al-Din's re-established Khwarezmian territories in Iran had capitulated, leaving his capital, Isfahan, isolated until its eventual fall in 1236. In eastern Khorasan, corresponding to modern eastern Iran and Afghanistan, Chormaqun's subordinates Dair and Mongedu continued operations to eradicate lingering Khwarezmian resistance. By 1235, their efforts extended Mongol influence to the borders of India, compelling Hasan Karluk, an officer Jalal al-Din had left behind, to surrender. Intriguingly, the Ismailis, famously known as the Order of Assassins, formed an alliance with the Mongols, providing crucial intelligence regarding Jalal al-Din's movements and capabilities. By spring 1231, Mongol forces advanced into Azerbaijan's Mugan plain, directly targeting Jalal al-Din. In desperation, Jalal al-Din sought support from regional powers like the Seljuq Sultan and the Ayyubid Sultan of Syria, appealing for unified resistance against the Mongols. However, years of aggressive actions had strained these diplomatic relationships beyond repair, leaving his pleas unanswered. Having spent the previous decade consumed by warfare and territorial expansion, rather than preparing adequate defences, Jalal al-Din found himself unable to effectively respond to the renewed Mongol threat. Throughout 1231, he fled through the Caucasus, narrowly evading capture multiple times. At one dramatic moment, he escaped imminent capture when a loyal general distracted the pursuing Mongol forces by displaying Mingburnu's banners, allowing him critical moments to flee. Jalal al-Din's fate was ultimately sealed near Diyarbakir, modern-day Amida, in southeastern Turkey. Reduced to a small band of followers by mid-1231, he fell victim to Kurdish bandits, who killed him while attempting to steal his robes. Recognizing his garments, locals subsequently executed the bandits and respectfully buried Jalal al-Din's body. His death marked the definitive end of Khwarezmian imperial ambitions. Jalal al-Din, a skilled warrior yet inadequate ruler, failed to transcend his dynasty's legacy of aggression and political betrayal. Despite possessing charisma, military prowess, and ample resources, he missed the chance to forge a unified resistance against the Mongols, ultimately displaying behaviours comparable to those of his Mongol adversaries. Nonetheless, his symbolic legacy endured. Persistent rumours of his survival periodically inspired impostors, swiftly dealt with by Mongol authorities. Jalal al-Din became a romanticised figure in medieval Islamic literature. Praised by authors such as his own secretary Nasawi, the Khwarezmian historian Juzjani, who fled to Delhi, and even Juvaini, a bureaucrat serving the Mongol administration. Jalal al-Din's mythological reputation arguably overshadowed his historical shortcomings. The repercussions of Jalal al-Din's death extended beyond his personal fate. Significant numbers of Khwarezmian soldiers remained in the region, now leaderless and working as mercenaries. Eventually displaced from their bases in Syria, these troops moved southward and, notably, captured Jerusalem in 1244. This event dramatically reversed the Christian reoccupation of the city established by Emperor Frederick II during his crusade in 1228. Jerusalem would remain outside Christian control until 1917. Following Jalal al-Din Mingburnu's death, the city of Tabriz quickly fell under Mongol control. With Iran now secured, the Mongol commander Chormaqun advanced into Azerbaijan, using the region as a staging ground for his next significant target, the Caucasus. Georgia, already severely weakened by the devastating campaigns of Jebei and Subutai, and later Jalal al-Din, was an easy prey. In 1236, Chormaqun launched a coordinated, three-pronged offensive against the territories of the Georgian kingdom. Chormaqun personally led the assault into Greater Armenia. Mular advanced up the Kura Valley, and Ögedei Noyan, known as the Lesser, to distinguish him from Genghis Khan's son, attacked central Georgia. Unable to mount a unified defence, Georgian lords retreated individually into their mountainous fortresses. The Mongols proceeded methodically, occasionally resorting to direct assault, but mostly relying on prolonged sieges to starve the defenders into submission. Several influential Armenian and Georgian nobles, such as the powerful Awag Zakarian, willingly submitted to Mongol authority, thereby receiving preferential treatment and encouraging other regional lords to follow suit. With Queen Rusudan of Georgia fleeing Tbilisi, Awag Zakarian became the kingdom's most prominent lord, actively assisting the Mongol advance. In 1238, Ögedei Noyan captured Tbilisi, forcing Queen Rusudan to retreat into the remote western mountains near the Black Sea, an area so isolated that the Mongols felt no urgency to pursue her. By this time, the broader Mongol invasions led by Batu and Subutai were already overrunning the steppe regions north of the Caucasus, effectively trapping Rusudan. By 1240, Mongol conquest of the Caucasus was essentially complete. Although there were episodes of severe violence, the region experienced relatively fewer atrocities compared to the devastation witnessed in the Mongol-Jin Wars in northern China. The Mongols generally allowed existing local governance structures to remain in place, albeit under Mongol supervision. The Mugan Plain in Azerbaijan emerged as a significant Mongol administrative and political hub, eventually becoming central to the governance of the Ilkhanate. The early 1240s marked a period of considerable internal upheaval within the broader Mongol Empire. Notably, the death of Great Khan Ögedei in late 1241 had substantial implications, which we will explore in detail in a later episode. Chormaqun himself was incapacitated by a paralytic disease, rendering him unable to lead effectively. His wife temporarily assumed regency before being formally replaced by Chormaqun's lieutenant, Baiju Noyan. Baiju soon gained notoriety for his excessive brutality, even by Mongol standards, frequently ordering executions without clear justification. Baiju's violent reputation leads us directly into the next significant historical event, the Battle of Köse Dağ. At this time, the Anatolian branch of the Seljuq dynasty, known as the Seljuqs of Rum, was experiencing internal turmoil. Under Sultan Kaikubad I, the Seljuqs had previously enjoyed a period of growth and stability. However, after his death in 1236, his successor Khosrow II lacked the competence and authority necessary to manage the state effectively. Between 1240 and 1241, a Turkoman rebellion led by Baba Ishak severely weakened the Seljuq administration, exposing vulnerabilities that Baiju quickly noticed and sought to exploit. In 1242, seizing the opportunity, Baiju led his forces into Anatolia. His first significant target was Erzurum, a strategically important Armenian city under Seljuq control. Following a 2-month siege, Mongol catapults breached the city walls, leading to widespread slaughter of both Muslim and Christian residents. Notably, Baiju distributed valuable Christian religious manuscripts found in the city to his Christian allies, while Armenian nobles accompanying his army attempted to rescue captives from enslavement. After subsequent military campaigns, Baiju withdrew to the Mugan Plain for the winter of 1242, planning his next move. In the spring of 1243, he returned to Anatolia. Sultan Khosrow II had publicly boasted he would confront and defeat the Mongols directly on the Mugan Plain. However, Baiju preempted this by moving his army swiftly back into Anatolia, catching the Seljuq forces off guard. Khosrow attempted to gather additional troops from his vassals and regional allies, including Trebizond, Aleppo, Nicaea, and Cilician Armenia. Observing the strategic landscape realistically, King Hetum, the first of Cilician Armenia, chose not to support the Seljuq Sultan, recognizing Khosrow's inadequate leadership and his negligible chances against the formidable Mongol forces. Erzincan, Sivas, and Kayseri all fell swiftly to Baiju as he advanced deeper into Anatolia. His forces comprised diverse ethnic groups, including significant Armenian and Georgian units. Baiju deliberately encouraged mixing within his army, aiming to reduce internal ethnic rivalries and enhance overall cohesion. By June 26, 1243, Baiju had effectively trapped the Seljuq Sultan's forces at Köse Dağ, located in what is today northeastern Turkey. The Seljuq army was equally diverse, featuring Frankish mercenaries commanded by leaders from Cyprus and Venice. However, Sultan Khosrow's leadership was severely compromised. The night before the battle, he drank excessively, becoming so incapacitated by morning that his army failed to organize effectively, assembling very late in the day. Stationed far behind the front lines, the Sultan was largely oblivious to battlefield developments. Morale among his troops was already fragile, overshadowed by the formidable Mongol reputation for invincibility and terror, leading inevitably to their defeat. The engagement began with Mongol horse archers, supported by heavily armoured Georgian and Armenian cavalry, swiftly engaging the Turkish and Frankish troops. Within an hour, the Seljuk lines broke into retreat. The Seljuk withdrawal was so abrupt that Baiju initially suspected a feigned retreat and cautiously held his troops back. Only after sending scouts ahead and confirming the Seljuk camp was genuinely abandoned did Baiju's forces begin celebrating. The retreating Sultan Khosrow left behind immense treasures, significantly enriching the Mongol troops. Although Khosrow escaped with his life, his military power and political standing were irreparably damaged. Facing little alternative, both the Seljuk Sultanate and Hetum I, king of Armenian Cilicia, submitted to Mongol authority, cementing Mongol dominance over Anatolia. The campaign at Köse Dağ marked a notable evolution in Mongol military strategy. Previously under Genghis Khan, campaigns were primarily reactive, triggered by specific provocations or diplomatic failures. The Otrar massacre, for instance, directly precipitated the Khwarezmian campaign. Genghis Khan himself had initially sought a peaceful resolution, resorting to military action only after repeated diplomatic failures, including the execution of his envoys. Early campaigns under Ögedei targeted entities surviving from Genghis Khan's reign, specifically the Georgia and Jin dynasty and Jalal al-Din Mingburnu. However, by the period of Chormaqun's later years and Baiju's ascendancy in 1241, the rationale behind Mongol invasions increasingly shifted towards conquest for its own sake. At this point, the severely weakened kingdoms of Georgia and the Anatolian Seljuqs posed no meaningful threat to the vast Mongol Empire. Instead, Baiju's offensive reflected a broader, ideological belief in Mongol supremacy under the eternal blue heaven. The Mongols viewed the mere existence of independent entities as defiance against divine will. Hence, the Khan recognized no true allies, only vassals. By the mid-1240s, Mongol authority in Anatolia reached its peak. Baiju's forces conducted exploratory raids into Syria, securing submissions from several local Ayyubid princes, and tested the defences of Iraq. However, despite their formidable military capabilities, Mongol commanders hesitated to move directly against Baghdad, believing it protected by an exceptionally powerful army. Consequently, significant action against Baghdad was deferred until Ögedei Khan's arrival in the region during the 1250s, which marked the culmination of the Mongol conquest in the Middle East. By the mid-13th century, Mongol rule stretched from the Mediterranean to the Pacific, a scale unmatched in history. The empire built by Genghis Khan and his successors had toppled states across Eurasia, uniting vast regions under a single, centralized order. In upcoming episodes, we'll examine the Mongol advance into Eastern Europe, tracking the campaigns of Batu Khan and Subutai as they brought the empire to the borders of Latin Christendom. These invasions would reshape Europe's political and cultural landscape, and for a time, place the Mongols at the center of world power. I hope you have enjoyed this episode of the history of the Mongols. If you like the content and want to continue to support the series, would you please take a moment of your time to like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and leave a comment to let me know where in the world you are listening from. Thank you, and see you all next time.